There's a critical moment when someone accuses you, attacks your honor, tries to tear apart your character, that single second where your decision will completely change your fate. And in that moment, the average person activates the deadly program society has burned into their brain. They defend themselves. They desperately start explaining, pleadingly try to prove their innocence, stammering with a trembling voice, "I didn't mean it like that. You misunderstood me. I swear I'm not that kind of person." It sounds noble, seems logical, feels fair. But for Machiavelli, this is the moment your soul dies, your power evaporates, your dignity gets thrown in the trash. Because the second you defend yourself, you've just announced to the entire world that you're nothing but a pathetic creature in need of defense. In power games, perception is stronger than reality, and if they see you trembling, struggling, begging, they don't see a victim, they see fresh blood. They see a target ready to be hunted. This is the savage law Machiavelli discovered centuries ago. The man who defends himself digs his own grave, while the man who doesn't builds his throne. The one who explains becomes a slave. The one who stays silent becomes the master. Because real power doesn't lie in defense. It stands so high that it's not even worth attacking. While you're desperately trying to prove your innocence, they're watching your desperation and growing stronger, feeding off your weakness to become bigger. And here's the most ruthless truth. Once you enter defense mode, you can never regain that lost respect. Because now everyone knows you can be broken, bent, brought to your knees. The psychological massacre of EXP Leonet's Yuan. When you defend yourself, you're not just losing an argument, you're surrendering the fundamental architecture of power itself. Every word you speak in your own defense is a brick removed from your fortress of authority. Every explanation is a confession that their judgment matters more than your reality. Machiavelli understood something that modern psychology has only recently discovered. Human beings operate on hierarchical recognition systems. The moment you accept someone's right to question you, you've placed them above you in that hierarchy. You've handed them the gavel and sat yourself in the defendant's chair. Think about it. When was the last time you saw someone truly powerful? A CEO, a president, a respected leader frantically explaining themselves to critics. They don't. They can't. Because the instant they do, they cease to be powerful. Power and explanation are mutually exclusive states of being. The defense mechanism is a devolutionary leftover from our tribal past. When being cast out from the group meant death, so when faced with social accusation, our primitive brain screams explain, justify, make them understand. But in the modern power game, this instinct is a suicide button disguised as salvation. The anatomy of POWRLSS. Let's dissect exactly what happens when you defend yourself. First, you validate the accusation by treating it as worthy of response. Even if you completely refute the claim, you've already lost because you've acknowledged it has enough merit to deserve your energy. Second, you shift the frame from their behavior to yours. Instead of them having to justify why they attacked you, you're now performing for their approval. You flip the script so that you're auditioning for their acceptance rather than them explaining their aggression. Third, you reveal your pressure points. Every defense shows exactly what buttons to push next time. When you frantically explain, "I'm not arrogant," you've just taught them that calling you arrogant gets under your skin. You've handed them a roadmap to your vulnerabilities. Fourth, you demonstrate that you can be controlled. If they can make you dance with an accusation, they can make you dance anytime they want. You've proven that your emotional state is in their hands, not yours. The Machiavellian alternative. Strategic SIANs. Cillian Machiavelli's approach was ruthlessly simple. Let them exhaust themselves against your silence. When someone attacks, they're expecting a reaction. They've loaded their weapon and aimed it at your ego. But what happens when there's no target to hit? Silence in the face of accusation doesn't just avoid the trap, it reverses the power dynamic entirely. Now they're standing there with their weapon drawn, attacking empty air, while you remain untouched and unmoved. The audience isn't watching you scramble to defend, they're watching your attacker swing at shadows. This creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance in your attacker. They expected a fight and got nothing. They expected you to flinch, and you stood still. This disconnect forces them to question their own actions. Did they overreact? Do they look foolish? Are they the unstable one? Meanwhile, your silence communicates something far more powerful than any defense could. You're so secure in your position that their opinion doesn't even register as relevant. You're operating from such a high level that their attack feels like a mosquito buzzing around a mountain. The social proof, here's where it gets psychologically devastating for your attacker. When you don't defend yourself, something strange happens in group dynamics. Other people start defending you instead. Why? Because humans are programmed to respect strength and pity weakness. When you frantically defend yourself, you signal weakness, and people unconsciously distance themselves from you. But when you remain calm and unmoved, you signal strength, and people unconsciously align with you. They start saying things like "that was uncalled for," or "why are you attacking him? He didn't even respond," or "you're still going after him even though he's not engaging." Suddenly, your attacker looks like the aggressor, the unstable one, the person who's lost control. You didn't have to say a word. The crowd became your defense attorney while you remained above the fray. That's not just winning an argument, that's orchestrating a psychological coup. The business, BATTLIFIL, in corporate environments, this principle becomes even more critical. Imagine you're in a meeting and a colleague throws subtle shade. Well, that's a very ambitious idea from someone with limited experience in this area. The natural instinct is to immediately jump in with your credentials, your past successes, your logical reasoning, but every word you speak in defense makes you look smaller. You're now performing for their approval instead of commanding their respect. The Machiavellian move. Lean back, pause, maybe a slight smile, then, if you speak at all, it's not a defense, it's a redirect. What specific concerns do you have about the approach? Now suddenly, they're the one who has to perform. They have to justify their criticism while you sit back and evaluate their response. The power dynamic has flipped. They went from attacker to defendant without you firing a single defensive shot. Digital warfare ARINs. Social media has created a new battlefield where the defense trap is more dangerous than ever. Online, defending yourself often means creating a permanent record of your weakness that can be screenshot, shared, and weaponized forever. When someone posts something negative about you, the urge to immediately respond with a long explanation is overwhelming, but that explanation becomes content for your enemies. They'll dissect every word, find contradictions, and use your own defense as ammunition for future attacks. The Machiavellian approach online is even more brutal: complete silence or strategic redirection. Let them post their accusations into the void. Let their followers see them attacking someone who won't even dignify the attack with acknowledgement. If you must respond, make it devastating in its brevity, noted or interesting perspective, or simply posting something completely unrelated that shows you're unaffected. Your thriving in the face of their attack becomes the most powerful response possible. Asterisk, the relationship, MINAFILD in personal relationships. The defense trap becomes emotionally charged. When a partner says you don't care about me anymore, or a friend accuses you of being selfish, every instinct screams to explain, reassure, and prove them wrong. But here's what Machiavelli understood. Emotional explanations rarely convince anyone of anything. They just show that you can be emotionally manipulated. The person making the accusation isn't looking for information. They're looking for power over your emotional state. Instead of "no, that's not true, let me explain why, try, I see it differently," and let that sit. Don't elaborate. Don't justify. Let them feel the weight of their own accusation hanging in the air. Often they'll realize how it sounds and start backtracking on their own. The precision strike meta-code is sometimes silence isn't enough. Sometimes you need to respond, but not with defense. Machiavelli perfected what we might call the precision strike. A response so calculated and brief that it ends the game instead of extending it. When someone calls you arrogant, instead of explaining how humble you really are, try. Confidence makes some people uncomfortable. When they call you manipulative, people say that when they can't be influenced. When they call you cold, emotion clouds judgment. These aren't defenses, they're You're not arguing with their perception. You're elevating it into something that makes you more formidable, not less. You're taking their attack and wearing it like armor. The long-term reputation stratis, what most people don't understand. Your reputation isn't built on what you say about yourself. It's built on how you handle attacks. Every time you don't defend yourself, you add another layer to an aura of untouchability. People start to notice. He never gets rattled. She doesn't feel the need to explain herself. They seem so secure that criticism just bounces off. This becomes your brand, the person who can't be shaken, who operates from such confidence that attacks feel irrelevant. Over time, people stop attacking you altogether, not because they like you more, but because they know it won't work. You've trained them that you don't react, so there's no fun in trying to provoke you. You've removed yourself from the game entirely. The authority amplification, EFFECT, when you stop defending yourself, something fascinating happens to your perceived authority. People start listening to you more carefully when you do speak, because they know you don't waste words on explanations or justifications. Your silence gives weight to your eventual words. When you finally do offer an opinion or make a statement, it carries more impact because people know it's not reactive, it's considered. You've trained them to see your words as valuable because you don't spend them cheaply on defense. This is how you build what Machiavelli called silent authority. Power that doesn't need to announce itself because everyone can feel it. The psychological weapons cask advanced practitioners understand that not defending yourself is just the beginning. Once you've mastered strategic silence, you can deploy more sophisticated weapons. The redirect. Instead of defending against "you're always late," try time management seems important to you. You've just made their criticism about them, not you. The elevation. When accused of being too intense, respond with "I prefer focused." You've taken their negative and reframed it as a positive trait. The dismissal. Sometimes a simple "if you say so" carries more power than any explanation. It shows their opinion has so little impact that you're not even going to engage with it seriously. The energy conservation. Principe Machiavelli understood that energy is finite and attention is currency. Every minute you spend defending yourself is a minute not spent building, creating, or advancing your position. Defense is always reactive. It puts you in a position of responding to someone else's agenda instead of pursuing your own. The people who rise to power don't have time to explain themselves to everyone who has an opinion. They're too busy executing their vision to get dragged into every critic's emotional drama. By refusing to defend, you signal that you're operating on a different level, one where other people's accusations are just background noise. The mastery PROTOC or developing this level of psychological armor doesn't happen overnight. It requires systematic training of your emotional responses and conscious rewiring of your defensive instincts. Start small. When someone makes a minor criticism, practice not responding immediately. Count to 5. Breathe, let the accusation sit in the air. Without rushing to fill the silence with explanations, train your face. Your expression should remain neutral regardless of what's being said. Any visible reaction gives your attacker information about what's working. Perfect your poker face until it becomes automatic. Master the pause. Before responding to any accusation, always pause. This pause communicates that you're choosing your response rather than reacting impulsively. It shows control. Practice strategic questions. Instead of defending, try asking "why do you see it that way?" or "what makes you say that?" This flips the dynamic from you explaining yourself to them explaining themselves. The ultimate power. MOV. The highest level of this game isn't just avoiding defense, it's making your accusers defend their right to judge you. When someone attacks your character, instead of proving they're wrong, you question their authority to make that judgment in the first place. I'm curious what qualifies you to make that assessment, or that's an interesting opinion to share publicly, or simply says who. These responses don't engage with the content of their attack, they challenge their standing to make the attack at all. This is psychological jujitsu at its finest. You've used their own aggressive energy to throw them off balance. Now they're the ones who need to justify their behavior, not you. The fortress of SELF. In the end, Machiavelli's teaching about not defending yourself is really about building an internal fortress that external attacks cannot penetrate. When you're truly secure in who you are and what you're doing, other people's opinions lose their power to destabilize you. This doesn't mean becoming cold or unfeeling. It means becoming selective about what deserves your energy and what doesn't. It means recognizing that most attacks say more about the attacker than about you, and responding accordingly. The person who never defends themselves becomes legendary, not because they're perfect, but because they're untouchable. They've mastered the ultimate power move, making other people's opinions irrelevant to their own sense of self. And that's when you've truly won, not because you've proven anyone wrong, but because you've risen above the need to prove anything at all. You've become the kind of person who doesn't play defense because you're always on offense against complacency, against mediocrity, against anything that tries to diminish your mission. Remember, in the game of power, he who explains loses, and he who needs no explanation rules. Stop defending yourself, and start commanding the respect you deserve through the sheer force of your unshakable presence. The choice is yours. Keep dancing to the tune of every critic and remain small, or rise above their noise and become untouchable. Machiavelli showed the way centuries ago. The question is, are you ready to walk it?